Jenny Thompson, what's up?
Hey, pleasure to meet you, Jamil.
Yeah, funny that we're meeting in Calgary, Alberta. We met in the Astro community,
Correct.
and and then I got this, like, you had mentioned on a call that you were going to be in Calgary, while I was going to be in Calgary, oddly enough, and I was like, well, hey, let's have coffee. So here we are. How the hell are you here?
It's my dad's 80th milestone
Oh,
birthday.
cool. Your dad's here.
My dad, yeah, both my folks are still here.
Okay.
And I came up to celebrate the milestone birthday.
So are you Canadian?
Born and raised Canadian from the Niagara region. That's
Okay.
where I grew up.
And where are you now?
I am in Mississippi now.
That's a big switch.
It is. I moved down there for promotion for my current career. I'm a helicopter mechanic by trade, and I'm now in a quality engineer role.
So do you fly?
I have, but that's the pilot. That's
That's the pilot thing.
Yeah.
Mechanic is making sure that the pilot can go up and come down and do the.
Correct.
That must be an incredible job. Do you? So you must be super mechanical minded.
I am.
Yeah. When you're doing wholesaling or you're doing real estate, do you see a lot of parallels from the way that you think in terms of processes and how things work, and trying to relate that to what you're doing in our community and in the work there?
Yes. It's more though the characteristics. Being a helicopter mechanic, I'm very organized. I'm meticulous, attention to detail, and then all those things help when you're doing your due diligence and setting those processes in place.
Wow. Wow, it's so cool. The things that we do that get us to the spots that we're in, all of the skills that you pick up along the way. Like for me, I had done 4 years of comedy in Los Angeles. I never realized that it was going to be so helpful for me in my current role in life, because I get to use humor as a way to disarm people, to make learning fun. I get to create great ads which engage people and draw folks into my sphere. And so had I not done that for all those years, for the longest time I was like, man, I wish I hadn't wasted that time in LA. And I could have gotten right to real estate here and made more money and, been happier or whatever. But
Life
no,
happens for
it
a
all,
reason.
everything, every little pit stop, every turn, every, thing that we might think was a misstep is actually not a misstep. It was just strengthening us in a way that, pushed us forward in a different direction. And so, I mean, all of it's just this, what's funny? I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about this biological process called the ready potential. Have you ever heard of it before?
The ready potential, no.
Fascinating. So what happens is they were doing these studies where they said, okay, you're gonna move your finger, okay? But they had somebody looking at a clock. They're like, so the moment you decide to move your finger, like mentally make the decision to move your finger, look at the clock. Just look at the moment, just look at the clock the moment you decide to move your finger, and then move your finger, right? So what we'll get is okay, so the person, so we know what time, what the moment was that they made the decision, and then when they moved the finger. And what's funny is you would think that when making the decision that's when the brain activity would have happened, right? But it's not.
Really?
It's actually, it happens before, and it happens a while before, which means that it's predictive before you even know that you're going to do it. So then there's this question of, is there really free will? If your moves are determined and are coming before you even make the decision, before you think you've made the decision to do it, the cluster in your brain lights up that you're about to make the decision to move your finger. So
That's a profound paradigm shift.
isn't it? Isn't it? Like when I listened to that yesterday, I was like, well, that's interesting.
It is.
Because we feel like we have so much agency sometimes, but whether you go left or whether you go right, and I think because of how we're designed, whether we go left or right is a process of all of the things and experiences that have happened to us in our life. And that's what makes us go left or right in whatever decision in life, right? But we have all these these things that tell us or give us like a signal. Hey, going right might be a good idea, or going left might be a good idea. And they think that it evolved from when, we might have been a part of the plant kingdom. Cheers. Thanks for the coffee.
Cheers, you're welcome.
Because they have these plants where they put them in this little tube, and then they've got the tube splits in a Y, right? And the roots are looking for water. And at the end of the Y on each side, on one of them, there's a water dish. So the roots will come here, and then right at this point, it needs to make a decision. And it needs to decide, does it grow left or does it grow right? And every time, it 100% of the time predicts and knows where the water dish is. So it grows towards where the water dish is. And then they were like, okay, well, maybe there's like a chemical signaling going on between the water molecules and the plant. So what they did is they said, let's remove the water. And they started playing a sound of water running. And it still moved towards where the sound of the water running is. And so they were like, we can't quite understand if plants have consciousness, but this might give us an indication that they do.
Well, it's true that plants are alive.
They're alive, but are they conscious? Do they experience?
I think there's some truth to that, because when I was on a forest walk, I went to Italy. I had my 50th birthday, December, and I went to Italy.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. A couple months ago.
What part of Italy?
The north. I was in the
Oh,
Dolomites.
cool.
And the boutique hotel I stayed at was right by a forest and with lots of trails. So I went on a guided forest walk, and our guide was saying that when a tree either gets diseased or has a predator or some sort, it will send out a signal to the other trees. The other trees get bitter, or whatever they do in this case.
To protect them.
To protect them.
Yeah. And not only that, but they send out different signals for different species. So if it wants to signal the entire plant kingdom in the area that it's in, it'll send out a different chemical response than to the chemicals that are of the same species.
That's
So
why.
it gets even more differentiated. I read another thing about this one plant that keeps getting eaten by caterpillars. And so it evolved a toxin, a neurotoxin, that when the caterpillar eats it, the caterpillar stops eating the plant and starts eating other caterpillars. That's diabolical,
Yeah.
right? But that's what's happening in that space. Crazy.
Wow. On this, between my promotion of my current career and even on my real estate journey, it has been a tech learning curve for me.
Not a technical person, like in terms of computers.
No.
Me neither.
And go figure this. I can take a helicopter apart to unrecognizable, build it back up, and have it fly away, but yet the derailleur on my bicycle still eludes me.
What got you into helicopters, by the way?
I combined an interest in aviation and working with my hands. Yeah. I did get my pilot license. I had it for a short while. And when I was in the hangar, practicing my emergency procedures on the ground, and I spoke with the mechanic who was there. And the mechanic had all the cowls off the aircraft. And he said, well, Jenny, what happens when you push that button? What happens when you turn that knob? And because all the cowls were off the airplane, I could see what was going on. And it fascinated me. So he said, well, did you ever think about going to school? The local college here has the program. I'm like, I never even heard of it. Because most people, when they hear of aviation, they think pilot.
Yeah.
And the next would be like a flight attendant.
Right.
No one ever yet
About
has
mechanics.
said, oh, he must be the mechanic.
That's so cool, though. I mean, it's, of course, without a mechanic, we can't even have travel,
wouldn't
because you guys
have
do so much.
A machine to fly
Yeah.
if it weren't for the mechanics.
Right. How often do you think machines need to be serviced? And have you ever worked on a machine where you're like, had this gone up a couple more times, something dangerous could have happened?
Yes. However, it doesn't happen often.
Yep.
Because when you get a good team or a good company or a good, whatever it is that actually cares about maintenance, and they'll do proactive things. Now, with respect to the manufacturer of the aircraft company, there are laid out either calendar or flight time or cycle limited time. So there's a lot of things getting looked at regular intervals. And they have that so you can catch potential things that could go.
Have you ever had a machine you worked on that was involved in something catastrophic?
No. The closest thing I had was a bird strike.
And is that pretty dangerous for a
I
helicopter?
it can be.
Okay.
Mine was minor. I was working in Thailand at the time, and I would always wait until the aircraft was in this aircraft. The helicopter had wheels, landing gear. So I always waited until the landing gear was retracted and they were flying away before I went back in the hangar to do other stuff. And I saw the hover. And then he landed again and started taxiing back. And I'm like, okay, something happened. And he got out and said, I think we hit a bird. So I said, okay, all passengers out. Give me an hour. Let me sort out what's going on.
Yeah.
And it turns out they just hit it with the rotor blade.
Oh, okay.
So it didn't do anything to the blade other than mess.
Got it. Bird didn't make it.
Bird didn't make it.
Oh.
Helicopter 1, bird 0.
Yeah, bird 0. Dang, wow, that's scary though. I mean, I can't imagine being in one of those situations where, because a helicopter just doesn't feel like you can survive it if it goes down, whereas in a plane, I feel like it might be 50-50.
I don't know, but helicopters are designed to glide, so if the engine does fail, you still have your main rotor turning, and as long as you have your rotor turning at a certain speed, you can control that descent.
Oh.
And that's what they call an auto rotation.
They must teach that how to land with no motor.
Absolutely.
Oh wow! So they go up, they kill the engine, they kill the motor, and then they make you land.
Well, they don't actually shut the engine off. They'll put it back to idle, usually, or at least in the aircraft that I've done, and I've been present during auto rotation because usually I'm taking parameters in order to see if we're spinning at the proper RPM or if I need to make an adjustment to get our RPM within the range it has to be.
Wow. So, helicopter mechanic, what gets you to real estate? How do you find me?
I have always been, I guess, in love with real estate since I was young. And I didn't realize it or put the dots together, but I used to love going through open houses of new developments and collecting floor plans. And the newspaper at the time growing up had a section in the homes, and sometimes home plans were featured in there. And I would always cut them out and save them and had files and files of homes that I loved, or different features of homes that I loved. And I ended up discovering you. I'll even go back earlier. I'm a member with a Canadian real estate investor network.
Okay.
And through them, they have podcasts. So I started listening to podcasts. One of our trusted partners within that community is CPI Capital, and I was listening to when they interviewed you on their podcast.
Wow.
And I have to admit, it was quite amusing for me because that's when I found out you were Canadian. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then you said, yeah, but I live in Arizona now where it's hot as balls. And I'm like, you just said that on a podcast. This is live, worldwide. I'm like, I got to get to know this dude a little more.
Yeah.
So I researched you. I listened to other podcasts that you were on. I researched astro flipping, and I thought I really would like to get into this because in aviation in my career, I no longer wrench on the aircraft because two things happened. COVID happened, and at the time I was studying for my European license in order to go work overseas again. And when COVID happened, for a year and a half, all my exams were canceled.
Oh.
So they would bring a proctor over 3 times a year to Canada to administer the exams, and that whole time period my exams were canceled.
Oh.
And then I ended up getting tendonitis of my right thumb so severe it required surgery. And it was just over 20 years of repetitive motion.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to do something different in order to, further my career. And like we said earlier, everything happens for a reason. Well, I believe that the source or God, whatever I know you believe in God, I believe he had different plans for me as well. Because he said, no, you're not meant to go overseas right now. You're not meant to wrench right now. you are meant for this path. So I ended up transferring into the quality role, which I am now, and that's what prompted my promotion and move from Canada to the United States.
Okay.
And I've now taken your course in order to learn about the wholesaling
Wow.
and further my real estate.
And then, so that your goal is to then move to Arizona, you had said, right? So then,
Yes.
and do you plan to pursue more real estate and do?
I do. I have 2 properties in Canada, and I'd like to also build my portfolio in the
Awesome,
States.
awesome. You know, it was funny because as I'm here, I'm looking around at all the real estate and I'm hearing all the things. Apparently, you can't even own a second property here any longer without paying, I don't know, 65% capital gains tax. Like it has just become so oppressive to transact and to be an investor here. Not to mention the fact that there's no access to hard money, right? So the private capital, it's determined usury here. Hard money loans would be illegal in this country. And I can tell you that hard money loans are how I built, our first foundation of millions of dollars in America in real estate was access to, of course, it was a high interest rate capital, but short term, I got in and got out. I made money. I made great money. So did the lender. Everybody was happy. I mean, I can't see how that could be detrimental for an industry, but in Canada, for whatever reason, there's no access to that kind of capital, right? And even though I did begin my wholesaling career in Canada, it was because I was servicing a very niche group of buyers who were all builders that were looking for specific types of homes. So there was not the same kind of buyer pool that I have in the United States as I had here in Canada. So I was really playing in a really small sandbox.
Yeah.
And that makes it hard, right?
Is that what prompted your move to the States? Because I know you're originally from Canada.
Yeah, so that, not necessarily that. So I had done really well here until the crash in 2008.
Yep.
And that devastated our whole situation. My sister and I, we ended up not only losing all of our money, but we ended up having our parents co-sign on construction loans that ended up going belly up. So we tanked our family. Like mom and dad lost our childhood home was taken away, our vehicles. Like they really came after us. So, they came to our driveways and towed our cars away. And then, one by one, the houses had notices stuck on them, and it was a matter of months, and we were homeless. And we went from millions in the bank to homeless in no time. And the banks are literally protected by law enforcement here. And so when that goes down, the guns show up, and they're like, "Time to get out." And you never realize that's. I mean, I thought I lived in a country where we had due process and you could go through things, but it was bad. I mean, we left, and I moved. That's when I moved to the United States. I already had American citizenship, and I figured, hey, let me get my act together out there. And so that's when I went down the road of comedy for a while, just to leave real estate behind for a minute because I needed a break. And then while I was in Los Angeles, just trying to support myself out there because it's so expensive, I started looking back at Phoenix as an opportunity because the market was just starting to rebound. It was 2010, 2011. There were so many cheap houses available on short sale and foreclosure, and you could buy a home for $30,000 and rent it out for like $800-900 a month. And where are you going to get returns like that? It just doesn't exist, right? And so came to Phoenix, started putting properties under contract, and I began wholesaling again. And the money came so fast, and it was a sign. It was letting me know, hey, look, there's been a lot of closed doors for you, and every time I go to open a door, it's locked. I go to a window, it's locked. But every time I came back to real estate, it was like wide open doors, a red carpet laid out for me. It was letting me know that this is where you're supposed to be, and that's what took me back.
That's beautiful to recognize those synchronicities in our life.
Yes.
When those things align. Because I'm, just like you, into personal development.
Yep.
And I've began to study Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and I figured you being into Mind Valley, are you also a member?
Yeah.
I'm a
yeah.
member of Mind Valley as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, Mind Valley's great. I've really, over the years, I've really taken to Joe's work over the years. I think he's really been able to bridge the gap between science and mysticism in a way that really brings together biology, biochemistry, physics, quantum mechanics, and meshes it all together in a way that's digestible, easy to understand, and practical, so that you can put real world application to the test and then treat your spiritual development like an experiment.
Yes. For me, it's like the study of how and why things happen.
Yeah.
From the conception of just thought, and sometimes even before.
Well, the ready potential.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think I have the thought to move my finger, but before I have the thought to move my finger, my brain is already downloading or already making signals that make me believe that I'm having a thought to move my finger. So where does the thought come from? Is the question.
I believe some thoughts are divine. They are inspired, and I call those inspired thoughts. I had a beautiful compliment in a group that is a meditation group for about the last 4 years that I used to just attend, if you will, because it was online and it's global. And every Sunday they've met for the last 4 years. And I have a good friend who was one of the core members, and I got to meet the core members. And just this beginning of the year, they asked me, because I've been such a regular attending, I got to know the team. And they said, Jenny, would you like to become a core member of the Light Warrior Collective?
Wow.
And I said yes.
That's fun.
So occasionally I will serve them, and it's strengthened my meditation practice, my spirituality, and I now get to serve others to that
That's so
capacity.
great. So cool.
In fact, last Sunday,
Yeah.
I had a session, and all of our replays are on the YouTube channel with the same name, Light Warrior Collective.
Really cool. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that somebody mechanically minded like you finds themselves in the woo-woo circles of meditation and spirituality, because it's harder, I think, for process-driven, mechanical people to find themselves in those types of circles. So how does that happen?
Funny you mention that. My very first session with Light Warrior Collective was having to do with the masculine and feminine energy. And my career as a helicopter mechanic, and the field I'm still in with the quality, because my formal title is aircraft compliance quality engineer. So I'm responsible for all the maintenance that has been done to the aircraft. Plus, I have to make sure it conforms to the regulations as well. So anyway, it's a very structured, it's very, even in this industry, it's very male dominated. Now with masculine and feminine energy, that does not have anything to do with man or woman. It has to do with the properties of energy of what is masculine. Structure, timelines, procedures, things like that. Whereas the feminine side, that's being open to receiving, whether it's divine gifts or whether it's even just any gift, like a compliment or creativity. That's the feminine side. And I had been in my career so focused on the masculine side, because even for my survival in my career, I've had to do that.
Sure.
That my feminine side was weak, if you will. So
We're underdeveloped at some level. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I had someone call me out and said, Jen, how about you confidently soften? And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm a little too, abrupt. Mind you, it's also the German side of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
That's an interesting way to put it. Confidently soften. That's
Yeah.
an oxymoron.
yeah. But I've had to lead with so much confidence and lead with so much structure in my life on the masculine energy side that, I wasn't in touch with the creative side or the energy side or the flow, just being in flow. And that's one of the reasons why I was so inspired by Light Warrior Collective when my friend told me about it, and I would attend, because that was now exercising all the feminine qualities of energy and being in flow and connecting and being open to receive and exercising those gifts. So it's, for me, there's my balance.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's the outlook? What's your, 5 years from now, what do you
5 years
see?
from now, you know what? Could be a very, very different story than what I'm telling today, because I have already experienced, if someone had said at the beginning of the year, Jen, you're going to leave Canada and go work in the States because you will have lost your job and etc., all these things, I would have said, you're on glue. I have a great job. I have a great career. And sure enough, by the last quarter of that year, I lost my job. I was married at the time and we couldn't live on one salary, but I was able to get 2 jobs out of one interview. So I said, well, he's also a helicopter mechanic. We come together as a couple. So he was hired sight unseen, just references only.
Wow.
And checking the references, of course.
Yeah.
And and that's what moved
He's still
me
with
to
you
the-
there in the...
No, we ended up parting ways years
okay.
later, and we've been, have parted ways.
Yeah.
I think back in
Sorry to hear that.
2000. And you know what? I have no regrets, because yes, I loved him, and that certain things happen for a reason. And I know he's in a good place. I'm in a good place. I've learned from it. I choose to glean the lesson of what happened so that I can be a better person, a better partner, and I've made peace and I wish him well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's nice when we can look back as adults and see all the love that's there, and then take the lessons from the hard parts, right? So that's...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I find when you love someone, it's like a piece of your heart is theirs, and it will always be.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. So 5 years. You're what do you see? What do you visualize?
I see my real estate investing growing, whether that's in the wholesale space, whether that's what I have currently in Canada. I see that growing, and my goal is to have it either meet or exceed what I have in aviation.
So you want your real estate holdings to produce passive income that will replace or match or replace
Yes.
the income you have in aviation.
Because I figure one of the beautiful gifts is, yes, I work now, but I'm at a stage where I still have to work. I would love that I work because I don't have to, I want to. That's my goal.
It's such a real thing, and I wish that for so many of us, that's just not even an idea that we can wrap our heads around, But when you make it a goal,
That's my goal.
and you say, I'm going to be in a financial spot where work is an option,
Absolutely.
not a necessity, then what ends up happening is you start finding the opportunities and the people and the resources that create that reality for you. And before you even know it, you're living in that, and now everything becomes so much more joyful. Like, for instance, I know sometimes it might seem, when I'm giving advice on a call, when I talk about enjoying the process, falling in love with what we do, really caring and serving the people at the highest level, and having fun with it,
Yes.
right? Sometimes I ask myself, am I only able to have that perspective because I don't need it? And sometimes I see people are like, I just want to get lucky. They put in enough effort in a day to get something kind of quarter done, and then they're just like, it's like rolling the dice, and they're, eyes closed, and they're just hoping that something hits. And then when their number doesn't get hit, they're pissed off, they're downtrodden, they're upset. They come onto the calls like, every time I roll the dice, it doesn't hit. And it's like, listen, that's bullshit, because you actually only rolled the dice once. You didn't even know what game you were playing. and you just threw the dice on the ground and then were hoping for a Hail Mary. That's not how you do this.
That's one of the things you teach in your course. And I love that it's also something you stand behind is a person's integrity and character. It must be a win-win for all parties, but also in our community to invite the right character in. And you hold that. And I love that you stand for that because I remember that conversation in one of our calls and yeah, you called him out. But he needed to hear it in order to grow.
Right.
And I love that you stand for that and invite people in to be their better selves.
I hope, it's such an interesting industry we're in, and we have such a bad rap out there. It's like,
but we have a chance to make it better.
we do. We absolutely do. We have a chance to elevate it, and we have a chance to prove to the community, to the real estate community as a whole, the place of a wholesaler, why we're important, how we are part of the process, and once we kind of can get over the differences and maybe some of the lack mentality of taking away of commissions or the predatory behavior or because there is predatory behavior, and there are agents who feel that they're being unjustly competed against by wholesalers. Whatever that is, it's all coming from a lack mentality. It's all coming from a place of scarcity. And if we can just abandon that, and if we can say, hey, I'm really here to serve. I'm here to, of course, I need to make money, and I want to earn, and I want an exchange of value. So that means that I have to bring to the situation value that's worthy of a check.
Absolutely.
And when you can come with that energy, and then when you come with that effort, and nobody minds when you take your money from that situation, and nobody's like begrudging you of anything for that because they really appreciate what you brought to the table.
Absolutely. That's one thing I've learned is in sales is service.
So what are you most excited to learn?
That's a difficult question because sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
I would definitely like to get. I've actually got a contact in where my market is, and I'm working with him in order to the nuances of when you start to when you can be self-sufficient and, like you said, grow your buyers list or etc. So I would like to expand on that, but also in the money lending space, because I have that opportunity in Canada to do that. I'd like to also match that in the States. There's probably more things that I would like to learn. They just haven't manifested yet.
Sure. Yeah, and that's such a beautiful thing, right? Of like what we don't know yet, but it's going to be so big for us.
Absolutely.
That's coming around the corner. Like you just shared that beautiful story of not knowing that at the end of the year you'll have lost your job, you and your husband will have gone somewhere else. Like it's this whole like curveball that got thrown at you, which you elegantly maneuvered and found a completely new path that then brings you to Mississippi, which then brings you into another space that then pulls you into real estate. The way that the roads connect sometimes from 10,000 and 30,000 feet is so trippy.
Funny how
but it's beautiful.
Absolutely. And that's why they say, enjoy the journey. How you got into real estate, where those doors were always open for you. I became a real estate investor by accident with my first property. It's like I said earlier, I was studying for my European license to go be a helicopter mechanic overseas again. And I had built up enough equity in my house that I could get a condo. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be traveling for work, I would rather live in a condo. So I looked at condos and I researched cities in Canada that I wanted to, and I chose the city that I wanted to be in, and then I went there and chose the condo, and I'm like, great. And then COVID hit, and I lost the ability to work, but thankfully was able to keep my job, just in a different role, and that ended up being in my favor. But I'm like, wait a minute, if I'm not working overseas, traveling for work, then I better put a tenant in this condo because the current salary is not paying for two homes. And when my tenant moved in, I'm like, I just became a landlord.
That's so cool.
But I hadn't planned on it.
Right.
And it just happened. And then when I took the transfer to Mississippi for my promotion, again, the market had turned. And my financial advisor at the time said, Jen, you really shouldn't sell. You lose too much. So I'm like, okay, guess I'm going to put a tenant in. So that's how I ended up with my second property. I didn't plan it, but that's how I ended up with my second.
How are you intertwining your world of spirituality, personal development, and entrepreneurship?
That's probably where I have structure, because there's many times where I work long hours, or certainly in the last quarter of our calendar year. That is our busiest time of work, because so many of our customers want their aircraft delivered by the calendar year end, which sometimes for them is their fiscal year, put it in the budget. So that's our busiest time. But in order for me to have that balance, I use my time away from work. And I have experienced the beauty of making connections online. In fact, my soul sister, she gave me the most beautiful compliment recently. And she said, Jen, if I could choose a sister, she has two biological sisters. I have a biological sister. She said, if I could choose a sister, I would choose you. And we met through our meditation team, and it's like that fills my cup.
Right.
So when I have that cup full, I can now pour, whether it's into my work on a daily basis with my team, or just pouring into my education, like when I took your course. I would do that in the pockets of my time, but I know that pouring into it will help it grow.
Right. And it's great that you see that you're like, well, no, I have to pour into me first. I need to fill my cup. I need to make sure that I feel spiritually, emotionally fulfilled. And then that can then lead me to doing a better job in my career, which then fulfills me there because I'm seeing my purpose and I'm seeing that what I do is important and valuable.
Yes.
And then you carry that forward into your relationships and friendships and so on and so forth. And it's just this cascade of like a butterfly effect of goodness that comes from you starting with that, that centering in yourself. And it's funny because, we were talking earlier today, being self-centered, and how society has lied to us and given it a negative connotation. And when you say someone is self-centered, that immediately
it does bring up, the initial reaction, like your feathers are ruffled the wrong way.
Yeah.
It seems negative. But when you actually look at centering certainly on a spiritual or meditation level, you're grounded.
Yep.
As above, so below.
Yeah.
You become grounded and connected.
In self, right? And so, like, why were we given such a negative view? Why did it? Who did that? And for what purpose? And I think there's a lot of language. I think there's a lot of systems. I think there's a lot of infrastructure out there designed to take you off that self-centering, to take you off of the path of illumination, to take you off of being the agent of your own destiny and your own life, so that you can become a cog in the wheel of the machine that wants you to just do what it wants you to do.
And I chose not to be a cog.
Yeah.
I was living in that rat race, and I would rather choose to work because I want to, not have to, because I'm a cog in that wheel.
Right. So, as we wrap, high level, what are some intentions that you had?
My intention is to, I haven't really thought that hard about it. I am coaching, so that's probably a good homework session for my next coaching.
I think it's important to set them, and for me, I would say that it's a newer practice in setting daily intention.
And actually, funny you mention that, because I just thought about my home. I'm here in Canada, but at my house, right before I leave the door, whether it's to go to work, every time I go out the door, I have taped a little note, and it said, what is my intention today? Today, my intention was to have a great conversation with you and foster a beautiful friendship. And You know, my intention of being here in Canada was to celebrate my dad's milestone 80th and to be here for family, to experience that for him and with them. And my intention when I go back home is to pour into my work. Now that I've filled my cup again, I can pour into my team and my work. And you know, my intention then in the next quarter and then in the next year, I set those intentions as they come up.
I love it. How are people able to do business with you? What would you say is the best way to reach out to Jenny Thompson?
I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram.
Do you know your handles?
Instagram is Omnia Jenny.
And we'll have that in the description for you guys.
Yes.
Facebook?
Facebook. This is where
Yeah,
tech.
we'll find it.
Yeah, we'll find it and
Yeah.
you can post it.
We'll put it in there as well. And then if somebody's got it, where are you doing business?
I have my market I chose is Arizona.
Arizona. Okay, so I'm your buyer in Arizona. Whenever you got a good deal in Arizona, just bring it to me.
Sounds like a plan.
That's my thing. But guys, yeah, if you enjoyed this, leave Jenny a note. I think this was a super inspiring conversation. I am grateful to be on this
Thank you.
journey with you, to have sparked this new friendship with you. I think this is beautiful. And, you know, I see, especially for folks like you, where you understand process, where you understand output and input, and that you are going to get what you put into something. And so you have to put in.
That is exactly what my meditation session, because I do a little presentation first for those who are visual, so I have slides, and it was, you know, continuing the universal laws, and what you put in is a law of,
Reciprocity at some level.
you know, in this one, the law of cause and effect.
Yeah.
And the law of compensation. What you put in will come back. So the
Right.
law of compensation. If you put good in, but you have to do it from pure.
Sure.
You know, you can't just put in and expect because you don't get it right away. You know, but you
And
put
you don't
it
get it from where you put it.
exactly.
I think that's a lot of us have this. You know, you get your nose out of joint because you give to somebody and then that person doesn't acknowledge it or doesn't do anything or doesn't say thank you or whatever. And then you're like, well, that's the last time I give again, right? But what you don't realize is you gave, and if you gave with no expectation, what ends up happening is that it comes back to you tenfold from a completely different way, in a different source, from a different
Absolutely.
thing. And these two are connected, but you didn't realize that they were connected. All you did was just do your thing, and then somehow, some way, more
Absolutely.
found its way to you. And you know, I think that's just a beautiful design of how things continue to carry on. And in an infinite, eternal world, shouldn't it be so that we get blessings from other places that we give them,
Yes.
right? So, great conversation.
Thank you so
I wish
much.
you so much luck, and I also happy birthday to your dad.
Thank you.
It's so cool that you're here for his birthday. My dad just recently celebrated his 80th as well. It's a blessing to have them here
Yes.
this long in our lives.
Yes.
So enjoy the rest of your time.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.